Hi everybody, Natan here. I have Boris Verkhovsky with us, and today we're going to be talking about some experiences that we had in the past, going back good 15, 20 years for sure, and
With you personally, probably a few more.
probably more. And I wanted to jump into one of the stories and unique experiences that we had together, because it paints a very unique picture in terms of both of our experiences with mental training and peak performance. And the caliber of people that you get to work with is incredible, and the ability to help them is even more touching. Do you remember whenabouts it was, just to qualify it in terms of time? One of the earlier sessions?
Well, it was in the mid 90s
Okay.
when I was still involved with the Gymnastics Federation and was already working with Cirque. And with Gymnastics Federation, we were asked to do a different form of training for the psychology section of the coaching certification program. And in order for us to get fine tuned, you at that time were working with your mom
That's right.
with hypnosis, with a medical hypnosis, and I was very curious and interested if we could take some of your skills in medical hypnosis and apply it to the psychology of coaching, and that's basically how we decided to bridge that.
I remember, and I remember some of the conversations about sports psychology and how it exists. It's a very quantifiable field already, and if you had something to add to it or something separate from it, it would look like this. And some of those parameters were that you wouldn't just be able to talk about motivation or talk about, getting in the zone or something like that. You'd need something more concrete to go with.
One of the unique things about sports psychology is that it's a relatively young field. It evolved immensely because there is such a high intensity of case studies. There's so many, every next competition could be a case study in terms of the full cycle of preparation, delivery, analysis. And so as a result, it evolved very, very quickly. What's interesting in the sports psychology is that majority of the experts center all of their programs based on themselves. You have to hire me, I am the greatest,
Right.
I am the one that you need. However, if you ask to go to seminars, to workshops, to master classes, you rarely walk out of there with something that you would come to your own sport field, gymnasium, and apply things. Very, very rarely. In hypnosis, opposite is true because there's so much science, analytics, and explanations on how and why things work in psychology. In hypnosis, by and large, we still don't truly know why it works, but how is so relatively easy that anybody can learn. Anybody can learn technique,
Yep.
anybody can learn self hypnosis, and it's tremendously effective. And so that's that understanding of the complexity and yet simplicity of it is what brought us to the point of saying, why don't we work with elite coaches in Canada and give them that opportunity to look at another tool? What if that other tool becomes of interest? That's how it started.
I remember that. That was wonderful. And there was a lot of great work done, and a lot of people that we were able to reach out to, and even some of the testing that we had a chance when we got a couple exercises and techniques and drills together and said, okay, even putting them into a routine, how would that influence this and that event and that stimulant stuff? That was
Yeah, and
wonderful.
it's as you said, we had an opportunity to test it right out in the field. We did our testing, if you remember, with Cirque du Soleil artists in training. We also did it with some of the trampoline and tumbling aspiring national team candidates, and so those were the very different realities. Those are the times that you felt and you could see or could observe that when you're preparing for performance, you visualize in the first
Right.
person view as if your camera was mounted on a head. What you would have seen as a performer, that's what you visualize. The very moment you finish performing and you do analyzing visualization, you visualize in a third person as if it was on a screen, and you push play, you watch. If you didn't like something, you push rewind, you rewatch until you bring your understanding in your recollection to a perfect performance. If you combine those two, both the
That's powerful.
preparation and analytics,
Yeah.
that is what we call a coaching stimuli. that allows you to, well, you could say drastically increase the number of repetitions without physically repeating them, or opposite, it allows you to drastically reduce the number of repetitions without losing the exposure and stimuli.
While still having that physical element there.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And I remember that there were times that when we looking at it in third person view, and there were a couple times that it was almost as if we'd hit a wall with a certain person and they could not fix it any further. And then the beauty of it was is that it wasn't just a mental exercise where we'd go, okay, how do you see it now? The beauty was we had the physical equipment and the facility to physically test it with a room full of very high-end coaches. And so we said, okay, here's what the session looks like. We do some therapy, we put in some exercises, and then boom, go and experience and try it. And we could see what would work right away. And when there was a couple times that it didn't work even as a final solution in the third person, we had to go back and see it in the first person. And then they could run through it as they saw it. That was incredibly powerful too.
Of course, because for a number of people that were participating in that seminar, they were skeptical.
Of course.
They were curious. They did it out of respect. They did it because it was a mandatory program. But there was a fair bit of skepticism. When they started to see those examples of when we were saying that, okay, there is a pretty high risk that this person will not be able to replicate the performance because of all the indicators we got from their visualization and what they described.
Right.
And they would quietly go, yeah, sure. But then in the next turn, they look at it and they go, damn,
it worked.
How could you know? Well, you didn't know. You just simply took all the indicators. You took all the things that were given you, the hints, and you just said, okay, the logical next step would be. So in that sense, yes, it was tremendously powerful because of the rapidity with which we had a true feedback on what does not work.
That's
if
right.
it does not work, possibility of looking at why. That's what made sports psychology advance so fast compared to all of the other classical forms of psychology and psychiatry, because the intensity, intensity of the life cycle is so short and so repetitive that you have all of those opportunities on and on and on.
It's important to be able to tweak and fine tune that.
In that sense, this is also what makes it so interesting, taking those lessons from sports psychology, from exposure that you had there, and then looking at applying it into a field of our professional endeavor, whatever they may be. That could be delivering the work on the production line, or being on the production line of sales,
Sure.
or being a manager, or being whatever that may be. But the basic principles of human psychiatry, human psychology, they don't change.
Peak performance is peak performance. Whether you're in business or sports, even peak performance in your own personal attainment of health and wellness.
For sure. And you remember when you were very young, and you were a very successful young protege piano player, and at one point in time you kept saying that I'm a pianist. And I kept saying, no, you're not a professional pianist, you're not a professional piano player. And you were quite upset about it because at that point you won the festival.
Difference, yeah.
And my point to you was, a professional is the one who is capable of delivering high quality result repetitively, sustainably.
Yeah, that consistency is the hallmark of professionalism.
It's a fly-by-night kind of successful performances or surprises. They're fantastic. They're stimulating, they're motivating, they're inspiring. But capacity to sustain, that's something very critical. And as you know, in business, you've spent most of your life in business. When you build your business, and when you have your performers in your business, in order to build the system and to have your system manageable, you're better off with a very sustained performances, not with the superstar performances. Those are tough to manage,
yes.
And those will screw up your system.
Yes, as you know, yes. Managing superstars and prima donnas must be a completely unique challenge, and probably a great segue for us to talk about at another time. We'll be back. I'm Natan. This is my father, Boris Verkhovsky. Thanks so much for being with us, you guys.
Nice meeting you all.